Please choose a username and password to register. You must change your password to continue. Your password must be at least 6 characters in length. Invalid username or password. You must re-authenticate to continue. Your password must be at least 8 characters in length and must contain some numbers and punctuation. This website is requesting a username and password. Your password has expired. Click here if you've forgotten your memorized password. Please select one of the following security questions, which we will use if we ever need to reset your password. Have you forgotten your password? Please enter your password to continue. Sound familiar? In today's world, everybody that uses the internet knows about passwords. They're everywhere. Millions of websites, web services, and web pages demand password authentication, and all authorized users are expected to memorize a password that will grant them access. Unfortunately, it isn't as simple as memorizing a single secret password for use everywhere. Different sites have different rules. Some allow short, simple passwords. Others demand long ones. Some won't permit anything they can find in a dictionary. Some demand complex passwords containing mixtures of letters and numbers and punctuation. Some let you keep the same password for years, while others demand frequent changes. What's more important is that although many sites take steps to keep your password secret, those steps require discipline and integrity that's really beyond the reach of other sites. Worse yet, some sites are blatantly irresponsible with your passwords, while others actively disclose them to malicious hackers and criminals. In my experience, I found that my online activities lead me to access more than 200 websites that demand password authentication. These include my bank, my stockbrokers, my insurance companies, my email server, my internet service provider, my travel agency, dozens of enthusiast websites, blogs, and forums, and a great many online retailers. After I've memorized a password for use with my bank, I'm not comfortable revealing it to the blog sites and enthusiast sites. Banking is not blogging, and I really don't expect them to care for its secrecy to the same degree that I demand from my bank. It's the same for my stockbroker, ISP, phone company, electric utility, etc. I've had passwords get stolen and used before, and I don't want that to happen on sites that control my savings or my retirement or have the power to send me a bill. The situation pretty much forces us to handle a lot of different passwords. People can memorize different passwords for use in different situations, but eventually even the brightest among us will need some kind of help. So I made this video clip to help show you how I handle this situation. I have more than 200 different passwords. I need them frequently in my everyday life, and they are always conveniently available to me. I change them when necessary. I never need to wonder whether I'm remembering them correctly. I never need to worry about forgetting or losing any of them. I'm not worried about some enthusiast web manager learning and sharing the password I use for my banking, because I use a different password for every site and every service that I have. I'm not worried about leaving them in places where coworkers, friends, or strangers might find them. I like the peace of mind this gives me, and here's how I do it. I keep a small USB flash memory chip in my pocket, like this one. These have come to be well known as USB flash drives or thumb drives, and in the last few years they've become popular, inexpensive, and rugged. I store a simple text file on mine, which I've named passwords.txt, and I use only the simplest of text in the file. I edit it with only the simplest of editors, no fancy fonts or fancy formats. This ensures maximum compatibility with all of my computers, and it also avoids delays associated with fancy word processors. On Microsoft Windows platforms, I use Microsoft's well-known free lightweight Notepad application to read and write that file. It has about 200 lines of text on it in alphabetical order, and each line commences with the name or address of a website or other online service, continuing with the username and the password I use for access. If other details are handy using that service, like security questions or PIN numbers, I append them on the end of that line. When I want to register with a new online service, I plug that USB flash memory chip into my computer, and within a few seconds, the operating system opens up a new frame showing its contents, just like any other thumb drive situation. I double-click on passwords.txt, and my text editor shows its contents. Thinking about the spelling of the name of the new service, I scroll down into the file to find a place where it belongs in alphabetical order, and I insert a new blank line at that point, and I type the name of the service. Then, I choose a username and a password for myself, and I type those into the text file. As a general rule, I use the same username over and over again, so that's not difficult to remember, only the password is different. When entering the password, I never store the entire text file, the entire text into the file on the chip. I always leave off the last few characters. I've chosen 3 short, memorable phrases that I memorized long ago. These are things that I'll never forget. One of these 3 phrases is always used as the last characters of every memorized password, but I never store that information in my text file. Instead, in my text file, I end each password with 11111 or 22222 or 33333 as a reminder. It's meaningful only to me, but it tells me which of those 3 memorized phrases complete the password. So, as an example, suppose I were to register with Gmail with the username John Smith and the password commencing F6TYV9, and I decided to end with the second of my 3 memorized phrases. So I'd make a new line like this: Gmail, John Smith, F6TYV92222. I find it helpful to use my mouse to highlight, select, and copy the password up to but not including the reference to the memorized portion. So I'd highlight and select F6TYV9, copying that into my computer's text buffer. Then I'd go to gmail.com and commence the registration process. When asked to choose my memorized password, I can simply paste it in from the text buffer, appending the appropriate memorized portion at the end. This generally makes for an easy and satisfying registration experience and gives me the confidence necessary to choose really good, random-looking passwords. Now, some services may reject my first choice of a password due to their unique or bizarre password rules. From time to time, I have been dismayed to find out that many online services won't allow me to include various combinations of punctuation, capitalization, numbers, length, etc. When this happens, I simplify or modify my password until I find one that's acceptable, always being careful to update the appropriate password field in my text file as needed. So this always has the updated version. When I want to access a website that demands authentication, I access that text file as described, and I scroll down into it until I find the line that names the website. I make a mental note of the username, and I highlight the password up to the point where the memorized portion is referenced, copying it into the text buffer in the well-known way. I also make a mental note of the appropriate memorized suffix, and then I fire up my web browser and go to the desired site. When asked for the username, it's still fresh in my memory. When asked for the password, I just paste it in from the text buffer, appending the final few characters as indicated from my passwords.txt file in my memory. It's easy and very effective. If the site demands a password change, I find it best to make the change in my passwords.txt file first on my chip, pasting the change into the online service afterward. This process ensures that I never forget to record the change. Now, some additional considerations. I don't like to connect this USB flash memory chip into computers owned or managed by strangers because it's possible for malicious people to access its contents. If circumstances force me to do so, I make sure I remove it as soon as I'm done, and I log out and power the machine completely down afterward. That process, combined with the fact that none of the passwords is stored here in its complete form, yields a pretty good level of confidence. To maximize security, I never make an electronic backup copy of this file. It exists in just one place, in the chip that I keep in my pocket. In my opinion, extra copies in computer-compatible format would require constant vigilance to secure. I need to lock those copies up. I'm not sure it'd be worth the effort. However, I do need some protection from loss in case I lose this memory chip. So from time to time, I print out the entire file on a piece of paper and store it in a steel safe that I keep locked in my house. This is my only backup copy. Each new printed version replaces an older version which I shred to ensure its destruction. In the steel safe, the printed version is accompanied by a letter to my heirs and family members explaining these principles and the way these passwords can be used in the event of my untimely death. If I ever lose my USB flash memory chip, I can use that printout as a backup copy. This method is simple, effective, inexpensive, safe, and reliable, and I hope you find it as useful and handy as I have.